Hi everyone, my name is David Solomon, and today I'll be teaching you all about the history of drifting. If you're not out of control, you're not in control. This was one of the quotes made popular by the character Han from the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, and he uses it to describe the sensation of sliding your car, also known as drifting. Today I'll be teaching you all about the rich history that this hobby has, thanks to different car chassis and drivers and many more things. First, I'll discuss how drifting even started. Then I will discuss popular drifters and their cars of choice. Then lastly, I'll discuss what drifting is like in the modern day. Drifting is something that is still becoming more and more popular, despite being introduced in the 70s, and I would say it's at its most popular now. Throughout drifting existence, there has been many popular drivers that brought the sport into the spotlight on many occasions, such as Kunimitsu Takahashi. Now, Takahashi actually started off as a motorcycle racer, and he actually excelled at the sport a lot. He actually got in an accident, however, and upon recovering, he decided that he wanted to switch over to automotive racing. Once he got into automotive racing, Takahashi was special because his skills exhibited the meaning of learning, which we saw back in week 2, where it says that learning is defined as relatively permanent changes in behavior, skills, or knowledge. And to be learning, it has to last. And the skills that Takahashi had learned did last because he put it to the test and repeatedly used it to the point where he went on to dominate the competition and won tournament after tournament. And it was all with his technique that he came up with, which involved sliding his car around corners. Now, the reason why Takahashi had come up with this is because of the tires that were used at that time. As you can see on the right, they have bias ply tires, and these tires were known to be really inconsistent when it came to grip. So what I imagine Takahashi was thinking was that it was either he had two choices. One, he could go into the corner and brake, and 50-50 the chance of losing traction or oversteering, or his second option is to purposely lose traction as he entered the turn and remain in control of what the car was doing throughout the whole turn. Takahashi was adapting and learning right there on the track, which is related to a topic we discussed in week 2, where we learned that learning is immersive and a part of everyone's lifestyles and happens anywhere and everywhere, even on a racetrack. Although Takahashi brought drifting into existence, there was another driver that became a catalyst for the sport's popularity, and his name was Keiichi Tsuchiya. Tsuchiya was known as the original Drift King, as he was known to glide around windy roads at consistent speeds due to his heightened precision while driving. He is also a two-time 24-hour of Le Mans class winner. He drove a Toyota Corolla AE86, and for those of you that know the anime Initial D, the main character from that show, Takumi, was actually inspired by Tsuchiya himself, and here they are shown with their AE86s. Drifting was illegal for about 2 decades, but thanks to Tsuchiya and the help of a man called Daijiro Inada, the first sanctioned drift course came to be, and it was known as Ikaten. Each of these drivers and many more have different driving styles and personalities, and they each needed a car that suited that personality. The great majority of cars used in drifting were made by Japanese car manufacturers such as Nissan, Toyota, and Mazda. The reason why these brands were the go-tos was because Japanese engineers had not only created, but also mastered the art of the perfect recipe for drifting. And each of these Japanese brands had a simple ideology that never failed, and it was a realistic way of getting more fun to more consumers. The drifting recipe was 1, rear-wheel drive, 2, a light chassis, and 3, adequate power. Cars like these helped people reach the most of their potential, and these vehicles ultimately became like an extension of themselves. And there are many cars that are now associated with certain drivers because they swore by them. Some examples of cars that followed this recipe are the Nissan Skyline, the Toyota Corolla AE86, the Mazda RX-7, and the Nissan 240SX. Although the cars of choice by most people have stayed consistent throughout the years, other aspects of drifting have actually begun to change. What was once a low-key hobby that drivers pursued in canyon runs and at private tracks has now become more well-known, and with it has changed the culture surrounding drifting as a whole. Here we have some examples of drifting entering mainstream media with films such as The Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, Baby Driver, and even Cars, Disney's Cars, with Doc Hudson teaching Lightning McQueen how to drift on a dirt track. There are now large-scale drifting competitions that take place all over the world, including Formula Drift, which is hosted in Long Beach and many other places. And this was unheard of before. And it was primarily because drifting was something that was illegal for such a long time. Within these competitions, one of the most popular races is tandem racing, where there's a lead car and a chase car. In this competition, the lead car has to try to perform better than it did in the run it did to qualify. And the chase run has to try to replicate and mimic as closely as possible what the lead car is doing. Other things that they're scored on are the driver's speed, how fluid their turns are, and their style while driving. And I actually got the chance to go to Formula Drift, and I got to take home a tire as a souvenir, which is really cool. While I was watching these people drift and watching videos of people drift more recently, I realized that their spatial and bodily intelligence was really, really honed to perfection or near perfection. And it reminded me of Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, which we discussed in week 3. And this came to my mind because to be able to space themselves so closely to a car while also maneuvering many different things inside of the vehicle, all while going nearly 100 miles per hour, which is what a lot of the cars initiate their drift at, is kind of crazy to think about. Now, although it is amazing to see something as unique as drifting get more popular, there have been repercussions to the car market as more and more people begin to want to drift. The soul of drifting lies in 90s Japanese cars, and the demand for them has increased tenfold in recent years. Not only that, but since many people are trying to drift them, it is expected that a lot of them will get crashed or just beat up. And with less cars on the street, more people that still want the car, people that own these cars know that they can price them really high. And that's what led to the term drift tax. What ends up happening is that the prices skyrocket due to not only the insane amount of demand, but also the rapidly decreasing supply of these golden age cars. Here we have pictured a Nissan 240SX that recently sold in 2020 for $32,000. And just like 7 years ago, you could have bought one for around 4,000. And if you wanted like a really clean one, maybe 6,000. I think this was even more than it was sold for when new. Just crazy. Although drifting has changed throughout the years, the history of it remains rich in tradition and spontaneity, and its history is constantly being added onto. From the drivers that made the sport unique to the staple cars that are a part of the culture, it is something that is constantly evolving and is spontaneous as the act of drifting itself. If you're not out of control, you're not in control. Just as Hans stated in the movie Tokyo Drift, drifting is something that is unpredictable both in action and as well as the culture. And I believe that this is what has made its history so rich throughout the years. Thank you.